Welcome to Inspirational Journeys, everybody. My name is Ann Harrison Barnes, and my special guest today is Meridith Hankens Alexander. Welcome to the show, Meridith.
Thank you so much, and hello to all of your amazingly inspiring listeners out there.
And for the viewers too, because this will be on YouTube as well. So Meridith is, from what I know, and I've read the bio, but I'm not going to go through the long spiel. I'm going to let Meridith take over from there. But she's a best-selling author, a mindset coach, and a motivational speaker, if I can get my tongue around my eye teeth so I can see what I'm saying. Anyway, right. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Probably one of the most intriguing things is that I never intended to do any of the things that you just said that I've done. I had a great education as I was growing up, and I evolved into doing everything from having my own jewelry line of found jewelry to having my own performing arts booking agency. So you might say I was kind of a serial entrepreneur, but I always had a connection with personal development and especially particularly mindset. So in 2016, it really seemed as if God had other plans for me that also included my amazing daughter, who people called Mini-Me. And so both she and I were passionate about helping other people. And both she and I kind of wondered how on earth we were going to be able to impact the number of people that we really would love to. So she went her way. She's the youngest of my 3 children. She went to Yale. She graduated. She traveled all around the world teaching English and doing all these amazing things. And when she graduated, she decided to head down to South America on a fellowship to help build schools and work with the indigenous population of South America. I, meanwhile, stayed up here. I'm in Florida, and I stayed here working on my business. Well, lo and behold, on February 19, 2016, 3:15 in the afternoon, the phone rang, and it was a voice that completely changed both of our lives. My dear, sweet Skylar had been taking a tourist trip to Colombia and had been on a rafting trip, and a random boulder just came avalanching down from the side of a mountain, and a direct hit onto Skylar. And she had at least 4 injuries that were considered life-threatening and unsurvivable. However, like we said, God works in mysterious ways. And so the rafting guides and the other tourists who were there managed to get her little body up into the raft, get the raft to the shore, lift her, and struggle their way up the side of a Colombian mountain, which if you've ever seen those, they're unbelievable, up the side of a Colombian mountain to a dirt road where their van was waiting, put her in this van with and mind you, her skull had been crashed open. It was a direct hit onto the front of her face. It had snapped her, it had fractured her spine. It had broken both shoulder blades. It had snapped her right thigh in half, and it had pulverized her left ankle as well and crushed her lungs. So needless to say, she was barely alive and breathing. And it was really only thanks to a life jacket that they had her at that moment. And it took them an hour to get them to this tiny little hospital in Socorro, Colombia, where the miracles began immediately. And your readers will appreciate backtracking a little bit. When I was in Florida that day, unbeknownst to me why, at about noon, when this quote unquote accident happened to my daughter, for inexplicable reason, I began to feel incredibly tired, unbelievably tired. And I'm not the type of person to take a nap. And it was the middle of my busy season in my business. And I fought against just succumbing to that, to the point where I went into the bathroom to splash some water on my face, and I looked at my face and my eyes were swollen. I was that fatigued. So I gave into it, and I thought I would take a 15-minute power nap, and I was out for 3 hours. And I looked back in hindsight, and there was no question but that my daughter, Skylar, who people called Mini Me, needed my energy at that point, and that needed that connection to help with her survival. And the dreams that I had were very, very tumultuous dreams, but very, very profound and very powerful. And so when they got her to the hospital, they gave me a call, and they said that the prognosis was not great, but magically and mysteriously, i.e. thank you, God, in this tiny hospital, which happened to have an ICU because most small hospitals in Colombia do not, also happened to be the town where the lead professor of neurology had retired. So he came out of retirement to lend his skills to try and help my daughter. And so they were going to try to keep her alive long enough for me to get down there. And again, had this happened in Tampa where I live, I probably would have been in a flurry, thrown myself into a car, and zoomed down to the hospital. However, in this case, because it happened in South America, I had to get on a plane, in fact, multiple flights with my other daughter. And there is no better place to really have a conversation with your faith than at 30,000 feet when you were flying through the heavens. And once I got through that storm of every negative emotion that you can possibly imagine, and despair, and that voice within me began comforting me and really saying, what are you going to make this mean? This is, you are not alone. We are not forsaken, and you have the power to be there for your daughter. And so I was able to inch myself up from total despair to a little bit of hope, to a little bit of belief, and then ultimately to a place of such total faith that Skylar would be fine, whatever fine would mean going forward. And I am so sorry, guys. This is real life here.
Right.
Whatever it would mean, right? The interruption. So that Skylar would be fine, whatever it would mean. And it was interesting because it was as if when I relaxed into that faith, that there was not only a sense of calm and being embraced in that, but it began to look as if life had to conform to my vision. And so it got to the point when in Skylar, where that very first night, her progress was stunning for them. Her brain reduced swelling at a level that they would have expected to see 3 weeks if she survived. And so we were able to airlift her to Miami, where multiple procedures took place. And it really got to the point where we were called, the doctors referred to us as the miracle family, because not only of the physical things that were happening, but because of the level of faith and mindset that we all had. And we went on to actually reach out to the community, which we thought initially would be about 100 people, but it turned into a global family. And rather than write words of despair and hopelessness, it was, if you really want to support Skylar, if you want to support us, then be the best version of yourself and embrace, have gratitude for those your own boulders, because it's not in spite of these boulders that you're succeeding. It's thanks to these boulders that you are given the gift of being able to truly soar.
Right. And I really did appreciate that, because, you know, even no matter what you're going through, your words in that book and in the Facebook posts were very uplifting. And I love what you said about dreams. If you what was it? If your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough, something like that.
Exactly. Exactly, exactly.
Oh, I
And
can attest to that.
absolutely, right. And it's interesting because I recently heard someone talk about being a visionary, right? And um, it struck me that so many people think of visionaries as people who believe in the impossible. And really, when you've lived through something like that, I think that you start embracing that a true visionary is someone who's able to embrace the I'm possible
Right.
when everyone else is seeing the impossible, right?
Mm-hmm. How to
So
turn your
it's
impossible into I am possible.
exactly, exactly. And it becomes a very, very profound and interesting experience. And so for us, I went where 3 years ago I was, well, before this, so it would be, 3.5, 4 years ago. I was terrified. I could not imagine myself being on stage. I was terrified to speak publicly. I literally, my eyes went black. Forget about the hand sweating. It was just total blackness. And yet it so many people reached out to me as a result of the Facebook posts on Sky is the Limit, that and they were sharing these stories and how they were being inspired to do amazing things, to believe in themselves, to be kinder to other people, to become grateful for things that had felt like they were horribly damaging at the time, and to go on to explore what their positive impact would be on the world. That I realized that I this what we had experienced, the gift and this experience, the miracle in this experience, was just too big for me to succumb to kind of conditioned fear and terror. I had to be bold, and I owed it to all the people that I wanted to help to go out there and share our experiences so that others would be bold and mighty in embracing their own.
So, what inspired you to become a writer?
Ah, interestingly enough, I had always well, I won't say always. Once I went to, as I mentioned, I went to a really high level prep school. It was called Phillips Exeter Academy. And at the time it was ranked the toughest, hardest prep school in the country. And I went there having come from a public school environment where I was obsessed with my grades. I felt like my grades validated who I was. And so, gosh forbid I should get a 98 instead of 100 in a class. And so all of a sudden I'm put into this environment with just kind of the brightest of the brightest of the brightest minds. And some of them were already really great writers. And so I went into the English class and absolutely was very humbled at my own lack of being able to write. And I committed that I would learn how to write. And I grew to love to write thanks to all of the amazing books that are out there. And by the time I graduated my senior year, I actually had gotten one of 5 A's for something that I'd written from a professor who had been at this school for 30 years. And he had only prior to that given it 4 A's. So I was the 5th. So I was feeling pretty good about my writing ability. Then I went to Georgetown University, and because I loved writing so much, I enrolled in honors English there. And for some reason just did not have the kind of chemistry that you would like to have with this professor. And I convinced myself that she hated me. She asked for, at the very beginning, she asked for a sample of our writing. So of course I gave her that paper that I had gotten the A on, thinking, this is my masterpiece so far. And she gave it a C+ over a D-. Same paper, did not change a word. And then all of a sudden in her vision, well, I was actually the ripe old age of 17. And so I decided that her truth was the truth as opposed to this other professor. And so I never wrote again until about a year before Skylar's interaction with the boulder. And I started writing a blog because I felt I saw so much kind of sorrow out in the world and so much pain. And I wanted to share how mightily I have always loved this planet. And so I began a blog called Tinkerbell Project. And it became one of my favorite things to do, was to write these posts. So naturally, when this occurred for Skylar, and all of a sudden people were trying to reach me in Colombia and I had no internet, I could barely find a charge for my phone, I thought, wow, the only way to keep people informed is to create this page called Sky is the Limit, but spelled like Skylar's name, SCHUY. That way people can hear what's going on. But because of what I believed, and because of now the gratitude that I had and the faith that I had, I was not about to make it a page of sorrow and despair and please pray for Skylar, in the sense that that's her only hope. It was that we have been given the empowerment, there's a reason why there are billions of people on the face of the planet, but we each are uniquely ourselves with our own potential to leave an imprint and to influence and to impact. And to me, we are not fully embracing and appreciating the gift and the opportunity that we've been given if we don't wholly own it as our own. So that was what inspired me to start. And all of a sudden we had thousands of people who were following it. And once I started, it was almost like I couldn't stop. So, yes. So.
Do you think that writing the book inspired you to become a motivational speaker and a mindset coach, or were you a mindset coach before the book was ever written?
I was definitely not a mindset coach before, although I had spent decades and decades of really studying mindset, the law of, I like to call it attracting the right action, because I believe for me personally, that really ties into, I have read this wonderful book called Sermon on the Mount, which really showed a beautiful parallel in the language of the Bible and the concept of the gifts that we are born with, and how that relates to what we see, we create more of, being able to tap into that God, that the heavens, the power of God's essence, and that we are created in the image of God, and to be able to really create a heaven on earth, we need to start to explore that, I believe. And so I had immersed myself in that for more than a decade. And so as I started, writing posts that reflected a lot of that, people began to want to hear more. So I began getting media coverage. Skylar and I, our story began being covered, and people began asking me, so how did you do this? Because people, especially people who kind of were with me, and it was so interesting, because I genuinely, Amy, was feeling happy and calm even while my daughter was in the ICU, and the quote unquote experts were saying that her chances of survival were slim. And so, and it's truly only that much higher, profound level of gratitude, understanding that things that had been so painful, that had been almost impossible for me to feel grateful for before this, all of a sudden I could see this beauty in it, not unlike the spider web that you're walking, and it's invisible, but then all of a sudden the sunlight hits it, and there's this magnificent spider web that has always been there, but you just didn't see it. And so all of a sudden there was a profound gratitude for those things in my life. And I thought, my goodness, if those have been so essential and true gifts to me, what it felt like to me was that at the ask and it is given, was that both my daughter and I had powerful asks as souls, as spirits, as the human beings that God had put here on this earth. And our big ask was really to be able to be a messenger of spreading joy, spreading the love on this planet, and spreading the positivity. And we wanted to do that, both of us, in a big way. And so here was this mother-daughter. And I really believe that sometimes the most impactful people, whether it be like a Nelson Mandela or whomever, have to endure some things that I don't think that you could really deliberately walk into knowingly yourself. And yet when your ask is heard by God, then God will help you even to achieve that, even though superficially it might seem like you're enduring very painful things. And yet I go on to really more passionately than ever believe that it is these things that initially cause us to react so strongly,
And then who does,
create,
oh, I'm sorry.
yes, that's okay, that just create the greatest inventions, the greatest discoveries, and the greatest ability to impact going forward.
Do you think music had a lot to do with it? It helped in her healing process?
Absolutely. We would play music. We would play music in the ICU. One of the first kind of manifestations of miracle, as you may know from having listened to the book, was we were still in Colombia in this, and this tiny little ICU room. Literally, there were no rooms for the patients. The patients were separated by sheets, little curtains hanging down. It was a small room. There was maybe 10, 15 patients in there. And so it had zero Wi-Fi or ability to connect. And so I had no connectivity. And so I mentioned to my daughter and Skylar's friend who had been with her, who was still at the hospital. And I said, gosh, I so wish we could play some music for Skylar. And I put my phone down, and I started to wash my hands to put the scrubs on to go into the ICU. And all of a sudden, a song that I so associate with Skylar, which is Izzy's Somewhere Over the Rainbow, just came blaring out of my phone. And I looked at it and I picked up my phone, and it actually had an icon saying you have no internet connection popping up, and like a notice. And yet clearly here was streaming from Pandora, which was just not it didn't seem like we hadn't turned it on, we hadn't clicked onto it, we hadn't done anything. And so there it was. And what, of course we didn't turn it off. We all immediately burst into tears, and we went over to Sky's bed. And what followed was almost like having a conversation with Skylar. The songs that would begin to play were in direct response to things that we were saying to her. And it became a really powerful time for us. And so we made note of those songs, and we shared that playlist with our global family. And throughout her recovery, music has been huge. To this day, when she sleeps, we have her listening to Baroque music.
Wow.
It's music is powerful. Music is a direct connection to the soul. Absolutely.
Oh yes, I believe it, because I've found healing through some of my biggest things that I've had to face in my life. Found healing through that, and I still find inspiration through it myself.
Yes.
And Pandora is known to do that. It'll just start playing out of nowhere, no matter whether you got the app open or not.
Yep. Well, it was magical and mysterious to us that it came on right then. But what was even more magical and mysterious was the actual playlist that was literally in response to, it was as if Skylar was having a conversation with us, even though she was in a coma, through these songs. So it became very, very, very powerful moment for us.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing. And I'm going to tell the listeners, like I emailed you the other day when I finished writing halfway through the book, right before I went to bed, I think it was Monday night, I felt led to pray for Skylar. It's just such a the book just had such an impact. And I tell you, when you're reading this, if you feel led to do something like that, don't hold back, because that's God telling you that that that's God telling you that she needs the prayer. That's God's holy direction. That's what I believe.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the beautiful thing about the prayers that I loved throughout the process, I mean, we had so many people praying for her, was to pray when they were holding the vision of Skylar at her mightiest and at her strongest. That seemed to create an energy that, again, it began to look as if the world had to conform to that. And to this day, so we realize that it is a profound journey. It's not a journey that's intended to be a few weeks. We're well into 3.5, approaching 4 years here in this journey. And yet, the moments, each and every moment is so special. And to continue to look forward and see what will unfold is just unbelievable.
Amazing. That is amazing. So, what do you have any new projects coming up?
Well, I actually have several projects coming up. I am working on a second book. There are a couple of publishing houses that are looking at that, so that would be exciting. And then, of course, the coaching that I do, the mindset coaching, has become my love, really my love. So I have a new program that is called the Butterfly Effect, because I of course work one-on-one with people, and yet my own personal mission is to positively impact 5 million people by 2025. So it's so I need to be able to touch and reach more than just the people that I can reach one-on-one. So this will be the second group of group coaching, where we really work on mindset, but we also work not only on how to get out of your own way and how to really own and appreciate the gifts that you have been born with, but also then how do you get your powerful message out into the world? How do you get the media? Because I've been blessed to have been mentored by some of the best mentors in the world, and I fortunately tend to be a doer. And so I've learned a tremendous amount, and I would love to share it with other people who also have their powerful stories. So to be able to unveil the butterfly effect, where little tiny steps create big impact, has been a blessing for me. And that's the big launch that we're doing right now.
Wow, that's amazing. I know you were telling me about that, and that's how you found me on LinkedIn.
Exactly.
So don't take for granted. Don't take these little steps for granted, because you never know what God's going to lead you into, right?
Absolutely. 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 And when you can feel it, I mean, you can, when you, there's a story of a pastor who was new to his congregation, and he came into the congregation and surprised them by initially saying, how many of you own your own business, and how many of you work more than 20 hours in this business, work more than 40 hours. How many of you would consider yourself busy people? And virtually everyone in the congregation at that point had their hands raised. And he said, do you realize that the gift, the inspiration doesn't come, the rest doesn't come from the work. It's the work, and the inspiration comes from the rest. So it's
That's
from the
true.
Yep. When you can slow down and be open and be receptive to what God and that partnership of God and your intuition can lead you toward, when you're open to that, truly anything and everything is possible.
As a writer and an author myself, I can attest to that, because, and I'm just going to share my experience. I'm working on editing a book that I published about 3 or 4 years ago, because it really needs an update. And I'm rewriting parts of it. And I have to go out on the front porch to listen to the wind chimes and pray about it to get inspiration. Because sitting at the desk all day at the computer, especially when you're rewriting something, that does not always mean that you're going to get the inspiration right at that moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you're in the throngs of kind of a whirlwind, that's not when the great ideas come, right? It's when you're meditating, or when you're taking a walk out and admiring the beautiful nature and the world out there, this incredible planet that we live on. That's when all of a sudden the light bulbs come and you're like, oh my gosh. And or in the middle of the night, I think they're the whispers,
Dreams.
the angel whispers. Yep, I call them the angel whispers. Come
The,
at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I can't tell you how many times my eyes have just popped open with a solution that I have been, really chasing all day in the flurry. And there I was asleep, and eyes pop open, and there it is.
it happened to be this morning, as a matter of fact. I had this scene that just popped into my head, and I'm telling you, and I'm like, okay, so what is this supposed to mean? And then I go out on the front porch and I'm writing before lunch, and
Mhm.
had the chance to get some writing done before we actually spoke. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Yes.
do you have any advice for aspiring authors, or anybody who anybody who has that creative mindset?
Absolutely. There would be, true to my butterfly effect, there would be an inner game piece of advice, and there would be outer game piece of advice. The inner game piece of advice is really cultivate and nurture your mindset, because it is so much more than a word. Mindset is really what will allow you to connect to that gift, that one piece that belongs to you and only you, out of billions of people and generations upon generation. And that is what will sustain you when maybe all the rest of the world is telling you it's not possible, you're not the right one, you're not gifted, you're not this, you're not that. And yet you persist and you persist and you persist, and you get some no's along the way, and you get some no's along the way, and you get some, some things that don't make you feel great along the way. And yet ultimately, when you persist and when you have faith and believe in your vision and believe in your gift, the day always comes when other people's impossible becomes, thanks to you, the next generation's I'm possible. And as you can tell, that's a huge theme for me, is that I'm possible is right there within that word impossible. And then
Right.
the outer game piece of advice would be to start building your platform and expanding your platform today. There's a Chinese proverb that says, when is the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the second best time to plant a tree? Today. So it's going to become so valuable if you want your beautiful words to be seen and to be heard and to be able to help other people. Then you need to get your message out there, and that begins with your platforms. And that's, depending on what space you're in, it can be, whatever works for you. It can be LinkedIn, it can be Facebook, and it can be Instagram. And reaching out, and do not be shy about reaching out to the media and getting your story heard that way as well. But be bold and own your greatness, and know that you are here for a powerful reason, and then pursue it.
I appreciate that. And I love how you split words up, like, say, for example, the I'm possible, the real eyes, and how you broke down useful and useless toward the end of the book. I'm not going to spoil it, but I'm not going to tell people how it happened, but I love that, and it makes perfect sense.
Thank you so much. And that's, that's where I feel, again, the angel whispers, right? I feel that when we're really connected, and when we're connected to God, whether you call it God or God universe or your source, that magic, that creative force that is truly present with us and will never forsake us, you get these insights that are intended to be shared with other people. And that's why, we are never ever alone. No matter how alienated sometimes we feel, or betrayed sometimes we feel, we are never alone, ever, 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 ever. We're
Never.
connected more than we ever know.
Right. So I'm going to ask you a fun question, and if you're uncomfortable with it, let me know. But okay, if you could have a conversation with or be educated by anyone, past or present, who would it be and why?
So if I could be educated by anyone, past or present,
Or if you could just sit down with that person
so
with a cup of coffee.
So in the book Think and Grow Rich, one of the concepts is actually sitting around a table with a table of advisors of all these amazing people, and that's really what I envision on a regular basis. I feel like I have mentors that I can have a conversation with, because God universe have no limitations, and I feel like I can have that conversation. So it would probably be a combination of Esther Hicks from Law of Attraction. And actually I have been in her hot seat 4 times, including having had the opportunity, and each time I knew I would end up there. I knew it. It was as if I had lived it already. So her perspective, her insight on really tapping into our God-given gifts is huge to me. And then I love Oprah Winfrey's perspective. I love Nelson Mandela's perspective. I love Gandhi's perspective. I love Martin Luther King's perspective. So I think that for me, a lot of these gentle souls who had amazing dreams, and who seem to be connected to God universe in a very special, big way that embraces the majesty of this planet. I would love to be in a room with all of them and have the opportunity to just listen to their wisdom and listen to some of the things that they had learned and why, and to really have the opportunity to have that guide me, mentor me.
You kind of remind me of something another one of my early guests told me. And she said she'd love to have a dinner party with all the people that influenced her. And that sounds like such a great idea, don't you think?
Absolutely. There's an exercise actually that is an inner game exercise that I've given some of my clients in Butterfly Effect, and that is to imagine that you are at a huge party that is celebrating you, and up walks 5 individuals of however close they are to you, who have felt like some of your biggest critics. And each of them comes up and they hug you, and each of them delivers a card to you filled with something amazing that they've written especially for you. And write that card. What would those cards say? And if you can imagine being in that moment, because sometimes I feel like we try to do things to prove to other people that we're either worthy, or to prove to our critics that they are wrong about us, when to me, in my reality, I want to really, really do amazing things for many reasons, but one of the reasons is to prove to the people who have always dared to believe in me that they are right. They were right to believe in me, including myself. Myself. Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have to take on that challenge. So that's your challenge for today, folks. Yeah, we turned this into a challenge. I'm gonna have to take that on, because I have I have people, I may not know them personally, musicians and other authors that just really influenced my life, and I can definitely put that into
Yes,
into practice myself.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And it's interesting because sometimes that particular exercise can really get through an obstacle, a barrier that we're putting for ourselves, because we feel at some level, if we're battling with feeling worthy of it, or setting our barometer of how limiting how high we think we can go. And yet if someone that we respect, or someone that causes some sort of emotion that's a powerful emotion, appears to endorse us and believe that we deserve it and that we can get there, believes in us, champions us, then that can be like pressing the reset button and allow us to go even further, even higher than we ever had previously imagined that we could go.
Wow. Okay, so where can people find you online? I know I've got them in my show notes, but
Sure. So you can actually find the coaching website at www.gritmindsetacademy.com, and you'll find a link to my book, Sky is the Limit, there as well. Or you can actually text the word grit, GRIT, to 26786, and you'll get a little gift. But that was grit, GRIT, to 26786. And you can connect with me there as well. And of course, the contact information there on gritmindsetacademy.com will come to me. So go ahead and reach out if you would, if you have questions, or want to explore the possibility of what coaching might look like for you.
all right. Well, I'm gonna add, I usually ask, and you didn't tell me that you didn't want me to do this, so I usually ask a lot of my guests, what's your favorite Bible verse?
So there are actually two, and they're both in Hebrew, in Hebrews, I should say. And the first says that now faith is confidence in what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see. And I would add the word yet into there, what we do not see. So it's that assurance that our faith has the power to create amazing things. And then the second verse would be, we have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure. And to me, that is the message of the power of deliberate, positive focus, that when we have that, there is nothing that we can't overcome and nothing that we cannot achieve.
So, in closing, would you like to say a prayer for our listeners?
Sure. I would love that. I would be honored. So my prayer would be, dear God, please help us to see the spectacular, dazzling brilliance within each and every one of our souls, and help us see this brilliance as the gift with which you have given it to us, as something not to cover up, not to be ashamed of, not to be humbled by, but to be shared as the mighty message of connectivity, connection between all of us on this planet, who you have put here to be a family, so that we can grow and blossom to create that heaven on earth, where we can endure any sort of boulders or any sort of obstacles that may come in our path, together with love and with appreciation and with gratitude, and with living in the joy and creation that you intended. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for being a guest on Inspirational Journeys today. And I have a closing challenge I want to leave with our listeners. So we challenge you today to go out there and read to get inspired, write something inspiring, and share your creation with the world. For when you've touched one life, you've touched 1,000. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a blessed day.